Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dorothy here from CCMA. Welcome on yet another beautiful morning to our Tuesday CCMA community chat. You'll see on screen there, Niamh O'Doherty from WSI is always supporting our webinar, and delighted to welcome Orla Stafford as our host and speaker today. I think a really good topic, and probably we're conscious as we go through the webinars we posted to date, of which at this stage it's over 20, that we've only really probably done a few on ourselves and sort of the things we need to be thinking about as we go through the COVID-19 crisis, and hopefully coming out the other side of it now. But the aspects of it that we need to think about, and I thought in speaking to Orla before today, this topic would be one that would hopefully resonate with a lot of us. And it is taking the time to pause and to think about where we're at and what our goals and ambitions and our mission statement is. So I know it's an interactive webinar, so Orla would need you to have a piece of pen and paper ready at your side, just to for one part of it. We do have a poll as well. And as always, we're recording the webinar and would ask you for any questions or comments as we go through the presentation. Feel free to put them up on the chat box there, or the questions panel, and I'll obviously put them to Orla as they arise, or even if you have a comment or an observation, please do put the comment there and I can let Orla know about it. So we're just talking about Orla's background with Accenture, so I'll let her introduce herself to you now as I hand over, and hopefully that everybody enjoys the webinar, and thank you, Orla. I'll hand over to you now. Thanks a lot.
Super. All right, well, thank you, Dorothy. I'm delighted to be here. It's a real privilege. Obviously, I haven't done a webinar with the CCMA before, so I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce myself and tell you what we're going to cover today. So I'm a Dublin girl, born and bred. I've lived most of my life in Dublin, and I'm a mum of three. I studied in college in UCD. I did psychology and business, and then I went on to join Accenture Management Consultancy, where I spent 11 years. After that, I set up my own consultancy company, and I specialize in, I suppose, change management consultancy, or HR work. So I've done everything from organization to design to culture change, leadership development, learning. So anything people related, you name it, I've done it. So today, and I'm also, as you know, I'm also an executive coach. So today I just want to do, the title of the webinar is COVID-19, Time to Take a Pause. And I know we're all having lots of different experiences during this time, and it can be very challenging. So this is really a little kind of 30 minutes to take a pause, to take a brace, to check in. And it's a little bit about self-awareness, understanding your values and why they're important, and just knowing yourself a little bit better. I'm dealing with lots of different clients at the moment with the COVID-19, and they're all having really, really different experiences. Some people are finding it really difficult to switch off. They're working even longer hours than they would have when they were when they were in the office. So at home, they're finding they're not finishing work till 9 or 10. Other people are made redundant, and they're struggling a little bit with that and what's their next step. Of some people they're just not working as many hours, depending on the industry they're working in. And then others are just struggling with the homeschooling and the whole Zoom thing. So yeah, definitely everyone's having very different challenges, and I'm not quite sure what your challenges are today, but it's really important to recognize that we're living in a different world than we were 4 months ago, and maybe during this chaos, maybe it's a chance for us to take some time and pause and to reflect today. So yeah, values, I would often do values very early on with my clients. The very first session, I potentially would find a little bit about their history, what are maybe some of their limiting beliefs, and we do the values exercise quite early on. And it really helps them clarify what's important to them, maybe why they're not feeling very fulfilled at the moment, or why they're stressed, what decisions they've made in the past. It just gives them a really good understanding. So I do find it really useful to do early on. Later on with clients, I might do some psychometrics like emotional intelligence, or I might do facilitated manager feedback sessions. So I get a more of a 360 of the person, and we kind of come up with some things to work on. But values are really, really key and really important. So I think it's great that we can focus on them today. So moving on, I have this question. I don't really know who's in the audience, but just to kind of gauge what you know about core values. Niamh's going to put that up for you. And the question is, have you ever taken time out to consider and understand your core values? And I know you'll be able to answer that. Niamh, is that okay for you to?
Yeah, so that's live now, Orla. So I think we'll see the answers coming in. So we'll just give people about 20 to 30 seconds and allow them to answer it.
Great.
Right, so we've about 10 more seconds on it.
Okay, great.
Just to say, Sean has just mentioned there that he's having the same problem he had previously in just completing that poll. I don't know where we got to the bottom of that.
Yeah, I might chat to you there in the chat now, Sean.
Yeah.
One second. Just share this. And the answer should be live there, then, Dorothy, if you want to talk through them.
Yeah, so the answers have come back, Orla, and 60% are saying yes and 40% are saying no.
Okay, so we have a good mix. So we have obviously people who kind of recognize what their core values are, and if that's the case, this is the time for you to reflect on them and kind of think about whether actually you're living in alignment with them, and if they are actually as the same as they were a couple of years ago. And then for people who haven't done it before, it's a good chance for you to kind of identify what they are. Okay, so moving on, I suppose what I wanted to talk to is use an example of somebody who is oh, sorry, just come back. Sorry about that. Not sure why I can't go back. Okay, I'm not quite sure why I can't see the slide. Can you see the slide?
The one that's up now is the values are your inner compass. Is there one before that you wanted?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not able to move the slides. It's just suddenly frozen on me, which is just wonderful.
Okay, bear with me. I should be able to open it, Orla. Bear with me a second.
Yeah, it's just literally totally frozen, which I have no clue
I
why.
have it here. 1 second, I will share for you.
Thanks, Eve.
It's in the Nelson Mandela.
Yes, so if you pop that one up, that'd be great.
Yeah. Just let me know.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know, typical. So really, I just wanted to use an example of somebody who really understands themselves and who dedicated their life to focus on their values. Okay, so the quote that's up here is the closing statement at the dock in the Riviera trial, where Mandela talked about the fact that he was prepared to die for a democratic and non-racial South Africa. So I don't know if anyone knows this speech, or certainly you can see in the quote that his values are really come shining through. So his values are democracy, equality, freedom, and cooperation. And as a young adult, Mandela would have decided that he wanted to achieve the almost impossible goal of getting rid of apartheid in South Africa and establishing a democracy in his country. This took decades for him to do, but the really important thing was that he was able to get some satisfaction and fulfillment along the way, because he knew he was choosing a meaningful life, and he was doing something that mattered to him, and he was living his values. So he was able to gain fulfillment despite all the hardships. So really, that was his core values, were his motivation. All right. If you can move on to the next slide there for me. Okay, great. So we're not all Mandelas, but it is really important to know that values are still important and drivers in all our lives. So really, what are core values? I mean, they really are who you are at your core, and they're what makes you tick and what you stand for. Core values guide your behaviors, your decisions, and your actions. I have a picture of a compass here, and the reason I do is because values are really seen as your inner compass. They are what guides you on your direction in life. It helps you define what your mission and your vision is for your life, keep you on track, and they keep you motivated. What they say about your values is if you are living at your values, you feel very fulfilled and very happy. And also the opposite is true. So if you are not living them, you often feel dissatisfaction, stress, and anxiety. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a couple more slides. The other thing is to say that your values are completely unique to you. They are your psychological thumbprints. So I mean, I've worked with so many clients on this, and actually I don't think I've ever seen the same combination of values twice, which you think they would be similar, but actually they really aren't. So they're actually what makes you different. It makes you different from your colleagues and from your friendships. They actually are just who you are. Okay. So I'm now going to give you a chance to oh, sorry, if you can move it on to the next slide. I'm going to give you a chance to spend a couple of minutes identifying your values. If you've already know what them, this is a chance for you to re-clarify. What I want you to do is, this is a list of words. I want you to pick the 6 that jump out for you the most, that resonate with you and you feel are most significant to you. I'll be chatting to you while you do that. So if you just walk down the list and pick them. Obviously, we are in a webinar today, and you can only spend a couple of minutes doing this exercise. I'd normally spend a significant enough amount of time at the beginning of a session with my clients working through this. But what I would normally do is I'd ask them to select 10, and then I'd tell them to go down to 8 and 6, so that you kind of really understand what's really the key ones. But for you today, if you could just kind of read down the list and pick out the 6 that jump out to you. The other thing to say is this list isn't exhaustive. There may be some words that aren't there that you feel are really you. So feel free to pick a different word. I know for myself, when I did this exercise back in my coaching course, I remember helping others, which was one of my core values. It wasn't on the list, and it was a couple of weeks later that I kind of realized that actually that's actually really core to me, and that's it makes a lot of it drives a lot of my decision making in both my personal life and my professional life. And actually one of the reasons why I became a coach is because actually helping others really makes me fulfilled. So just to keep that in mind, if there is another word, please use it. And the other thing is just to say is that there's no right or wrong values. So it's not that respect is better than excellence or anything like that. It's literally your personal preference. So just go with your gut and try not to think of what you think other people might think or like to think are good values. Just go with what feels right for you. Just say it's like your pizza topping. Some people like pineapple, some people like ham, and that's the same way it is with values.
Can I just ask
Sorry,
I was just going to ask if people are going through the list. Like, I wouldn't have seen something like health as a value before, because presumably that's something that's a little bit outside your control. I mean, you want to be healthy, but things can conspire against you.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna deal with that actually, because actually it's one of my examples that I use in a later slide. So yeah, it is actually, and people do pick it as a value, and it is a real driver in their life. So yeah, I'll talk about that in a couple of slides later, so you will see.
Perfect.
Okay, I mean, maybe if people gonna give me a thumbs up or to say if they're ready. Obviously, if you're not ready, what you can do is if you aren't, you could take a photo of this screen and just leave it on your phone beside you, so you can keep looking at it as we go through the webinar. I think we're ready to move on. Okay, great. So, I mean, what our overall aim is to live in alignment with our personal values. So I think you hopefully all have your 6, and if you just keep them beside you and you refer to them as I explained through this, and just keep your own situation in mind. I've just kind of, in the yellow, you can see I've kind of come up with an example client, just someone, and this is kind of 6 values that they have said. This is where health is in here. So I've got accomplishments, health, fun, integrity, creativity, respect. So we're not just looking at this from a work perspective, we're looking at a full rounded person and all their values, which are the most important to them. So if you're in alignment, people say that they feel fulfilled, they feel happiness, they're purpose driven, they're motivated, they're energized. That's what you feel, and that's what everybody strives for, and we don't always feel that way. So let's just take this example. So this person, if they have a value of accomplishments, they're probably working in an environment where they feel they're really succeeding and they're doing things that they really value and have lots of accomplishment in it. It mightn't be their work, it actually could even be in their personal life. They might be climbing Mount Everest in their part-time, but they have this sense of accomplishments. Likewise, health, this person really values health and it's really important to them, and it's one of the drivers in their life. So they're making sure that they're getting their exercise in, they're eating healthy, they might practice a bit of mindfulness and meditation. So health is really important to that person. So they're making sure they prioritize that part of their day to focus on that, okay, and feel good about themselves. The other value is be fun. So this person likes fun. So they probably are very active in their social life, and they do things and activities in their personal life which give them joy and time with their family. And potentially they work in a company where there's a really good culture and there's a really good team dynamic, and it can be good fun as well. Integrity is really important to the person, so they're probably living with integrity and making sure they're honest in all their dealings, and they surrounded themselves with people in both their family life and their friendship who are in the same vein. Creativity, they're probably getting the opportunity in work or in their personal life to be creative. And respect, they would definitely feel that they are being respected by work or in their family and friends, and they feel that. So that's kind of an example of, when everything's going going right and you're feeling aligned. But you know, as we all know, that's not necessarily always the case. So if your values aren't aligned, you can feel stress, anxiety, dissatisfaction, unhappiness. It's that kind of gut feeling in the pit of your stomach that something's wrong. Some people feel that they're kind of not really living the life they should be, and they're not quite sure, and they feel that they're just kind of meandering through life. And using the same example, so let's take something like creativity. So say, for example, this person really values creativity, and they're currently in a role in their job where they're not getting an opportunity to be creative, they're not being challenged, they're feeling a little bit bored. So for the first thing is by recognizing that, okay, creativity is one of my values, and I'm not honoring it right at this moment. It gives them that kind of moment to kind of think about it and to make a choice. And be aware of that. So, I mean, they may decide, you know what, right now, you know, there's nothing I'm going to do about it. I'm really busy. I just need to head down, but I'll think about it later on. You know, that's fine, but at least they're aware of it. Or they may take a proactive step, and they may have a look and talk to their boss and ask if there's something, a new project they could work on, or there's something that they would like to do, which is a bit more creative, and really explain that that's really important to them. Or maybe there's nothing in their job that they can do, and maybe they can look at taking up a hobby or something in their personal life that actually honors that value, so that they feel that they actually are feeling more fulfilled. So there's an example of, and then, for example, health as well. So let's say this person, you know, they really value health, but they're really busy in work. And they're coming home, they're eating takeaways and just grabbing a sandwich. They're not healthy. They're skipping all their exercise routine. Maybe they used to running in the park or going to the gym, and they're just not doing it at this moment. So this is what I'm talking about, Dorothy. When someone isn't living in alignment with health, they'll feel really awful. They'll feel really miserable, unhappy. They may have put on weight, whatever else. So once again, it's a choice that, you know what, this is really important to me, and this is something that I really find important. So actually, I have a choice about what I'm going to do, and it makes you just think about it, which is really important. So that's an example of non-alignment. The other thing I want to talk to you is about your value triggers. And so if your values are being trampled on, it can actually lead you to an individual speaking up or taking a stand, or being propelled to take action, you know. We talked about Nelson Mandela, like he dedicated his life to living his values. He went to prison for it. You know, he lived a lot of hardship because he felt so strongly about his values. It doesn't always have to be so dramatic as that, but like if you think about it, taking the same example, so let's say this person, they feel respect is something they feel really strongly about, and maybe in their office or in their work, they feel they're not being respected by a teammate or by their boss. They'll feel strongly enough that they'll actually maybe speak up and take a stand on it and actually talk to the person about how that feels. And if they don't do that, they'll probably feel to themselves, look, I really kind of sold out myself there. That was really important to me. I really should have said something. Likewise, if somebody in work isn't being respected by a colleague and you notice it, you probably feel, because that's a strong value for you, that you'll want to speak up and talk to them about it and put it right. So your triggers they do kind of help you maybe to take a course of action, which might be difficult. So that's by knowing your values, you sometimes kind of check in on that as well. The other thing I would say about your triggers is that if you look at your values, and when you all have your 6 there, and if you look at the opposite of them, so for example, in the opposite of integrity is dishonesty, or the opposite of fun might be boring. So you have to think about what that means. They're actually your triggers. So for example, something like accomplishment, this person's, you know, accomplishment is really important to them. So if somebody in their office isn't actually striving and doing a good job, that might find it very frustrating. Or if you're like me and you have a 15-year-old boy who's sitting around playing Xbox all day, that would really be a trigger for me, because, you know, I want him to be up and doing something. So you always think of the opposite of your values, because they are triggers to you reacting and feeling kind of off about stuff. The other one to mention is overreaction. You know, sometimes your reaction can be extremely strong because, you know, one of your values is being kind of not honored. So I'll give you an example from my own personal life. One of my values would be integrity. So I like to kind of be honest in my dealings, and I like people to be honest in their dealings with me. I would have worked for a couple of years ago in a company where a vendor wasn't being honest about what they were delivering, and they were continuously telling me untruths. And I was really quite upset about it and got quite angry, took it quite personally. I couldn't understand why that person wouldn't be honest with me. I took it home, kind of thought about it at home. It kind of really got to me. And then I kind of, you know, took a step back and kind of looked around, and I kind of looked at all my teammates, and they were, you know, they didn't think it was right, because integrity, you know, was important to them as well, but it wasn't maybe one of their core values. So they were just kind of moving on and not, you know, not being too bothered about it, whilst it actually had really impacted me. So it's understanding that sometimes you kind of almost overreact if one of your values are trampled on, and then you can look at others and say, okay, well, they're not reacting the same way. So it just kind of gives you that kind of guidance to understand your behavior a little bit more.
And Orla,
So
a question.
Yeah.
Just a question. You know the way sometimes, obviously, your own, and I know going to contact centres a lot, and I see all the lovely value statements up on the wall, and I genuinely do believe it directs an awful lot of companies and helps their staff direct them in terms of how they, deliver customer support in the case of contact centres or whatever. But what if your personal values aren't in sync, or the company values aren't in sync with yours, and you're constrained in a way because we all have to go to work, we all have mortgages to pay. And I know you said that there's triggers, but at some stage, do you have to back down on a value, or how do you manage that conflict?
I think that, that's a good question. I think that it depends. I mean, I think everybody has financial constraints, they have commitments, and and a lot of, if there's a lot of companies that maybe the values don't match. But I think, first of all, the first thing is to kind of recognize that. Okay, so that's really important. So if you recognize it, you can kind of understand why you might be feeling kind of comfortable with that. And then you're going to need to make some decisions. And maybe it's right now, there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe right now, you have to pay the mortgage, but you can make a plan for the future, and you can kind of think to yourself, okay, well, maybe this isn't perfect for me right now, but what would I want to do? Or is there anything I can do, small steps within my job to make changes to help me feel a bit more fulfilled? So it's not, even just being aware of them helps you kind of have a plan and a motivation to move forward. You don't, and that's the problem. You can't always change things straight away because you are constrained, but that understanding and recognizing just kind of helps you manage it a little bit better.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so I just want, I suppose, if we want to be interactive, if anyone would like to share, if any of this has resonated with anyone, and if they have any example where they felt out of alignment, or that there has been a trigger, and if they want to share it, I don't know if they do, now would be the opportunity we can unmute you. I don't know if anyone is interested in doing that.
I think we have a shy audience this morning.
Yeah, in fairness, it's quite personal, so I don't expect people to, and that's absolutely fine. So you can have a think about it yourself anyway. Okay, so we might move on if that's okay. So I really wanted to talk about values and authentic leadership. I suppose the strongest leaders in the world are people you recognize they really know who they are, and they communicate. They're excellent at communicating that and getting people to follow them and believe in them. And they're really passionate, and they bring a lot of energy, and people are just naturally drawn to them. So strong leaders really have the ability to actually bring their entire self to work, to be really authentic. And as a leader, it's really important to be real and relatable, because it does build the trust of your employees and your customers. So what I would advise people is, if you are, whether you knew them or you suddenly now kind of are more aware of your values, please do try and share it with your staff, your employees, your team. And it's not that I'm saying, like, take out your list of 6 and say, oh, here are my values. You can do that if you want to, but it's actually more to bring it into conversation. So for example, one of my values might be commitment. So I would, if I commit to something, I would like to do it, and I would expect people, if they commit to me, to see it out. So what I might say to my team members is, really think hard and before you commit to something, because I expect to be done, and let me know if you're not going to be able to do it just in time, because it's something that really frustrates me, and just that's the way I work. So by kind of letting them know how you work, they're kind of aware, so they'll kind of say, okay, I'm not going to commit to that because I won't be able to do it in that time frame. I'll really think about what I commit to. So it's about sharing them in a kind of a more meaningful way and through conversations. So this is a highly transparent way to work, and it has some very positive effects. So it'll help you lead with more clarity. You inspire people, you gain trust and their respect. And you might motivate them because they see your vision, they know how you work. And really important for your team, as I said before, they have greater clarity about what you want and what you expect from them. And it enables you to develop stronger relationships. So yeah, I do think it's something to think about. It's definitely food for thought for all of you. Okay, so if you want to move on to the next one. So we've spoken now about, our values, which are our kind of 6 words. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about, creating your personal mission statement. I'm going to talk a little bit about Stephen Covey, his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm sure many of you have read it. It's been around for 30 years. It's a bestseller. And it's actually just as relevant 30 years later than it was back then. I only read it last year. I'm actually sorry, I only read it in my 40s. I actually I would have liked to have read it when I was younger, in my 30s. I found it really, really useful. So I do, if anyone hasn't read it, I'd recommend it. He goes through 7 habits, 7 different habits. I'm not going to go through them all today, obviously. But one of the things I wanted to focus on is habit 2, which is begin with the end in mind. So through his coaching, he does a little piece in his book around visualization, where he actually asks you to kind of visualize yourself at your funeral. I know it's quite morbid, but it is quite effective. So he asks you to kind of think about, who would come and what they would say about you. So he said, look, think about it, there being 4 speakers, somebody who represents your friendship group, somebody who represents your employees, somebody who represents your family, and then somebody who represents, something to do with your community. It may be that, you coached a football team, or that you're involved in a charity. So somewhere where you kind of done some service or given back. And he first of all asks you to have a think about right now, what do you think they'd be saying about you, okay? And then also think, and maybe it's exactly what you want, but also maybe, it's maybe not exactly what you want. And he makes you think about, what kind of character would you like them to describe? And what kind of contributions and achievements would you like them to say? And quite importantly, what kind of positive influence would you have made on their lives? So he asks you to kind of think about that, and I suppose what he's talking about is this is a chance to kind of pause and actually kind of take control of your own life and write your own script. And a lot of people are living their lives based on a script that's kind of almost written for them, based on what their parents want them to do, what their partners say, what society wants. So this is a chance for you to kind of take a pause and say, look, I'm going to take control. I'm going to write my script. This is the way I want to lead my life. So he talks about developing a mission statement, which forces you to think through your priorities deeply and align with your behaviors and your beliefs. So, using your values, you can come up with these personal mission statements. I've put together, if you move through to the next slide, I've got 2 examples of personal mission statements, which you can have a look at. Obviously, this isn't the time for you to write your personal mission statement within this webinar. So I would encourage you to take some time after this event. I know that the CCMA will have a copy of this presentation on their website. So if you can download it after the session, and the session's recorded, so you can have a look at it. So everybody's mission statements is absolutely personal, and the way you write is personal. This person has said, things like defend those who are absent, listen twice as much as you speak, do not fear mistakes, keep a sense of humor, develop 1 new proficiency a year. So, this is an example of one mission statement. If you move to the next slide. Okay, here's an example of another one. It's a bit more wordy and a bit more lengthy. And the whole thing is it's actually totally up to you how you write it. And today is just food for thought. I wrote mine when after I read the Stephen Covey book, and I actually put it in I wrote mine straight away. I just put it in the back page of my book, which I leave on my desk. And actually, I just know that it's there if I want to check in with it. So if you do write it, don't file it away or don't put it in a drawer. It's something if you can kind of keep somewhere where you can visually see it, and also to check in with it. One of the things he said is that it's something you should check in every year, because a lot of things may change and you might want to revise it. So it's something that you certainly, if you are interested in, it's something that if anybody wants to talk to me about it afterwards, that they're welcome to. Or certainly if you wanted to buy that book, it definitely describes in a little more detail. But using your values to build on the mission statements is a real value to help you guide you through your life. So that's the mission statement. So I suppose we're just going to, wrap up. This is some kind of tips for going forward. I suppose what I would often say to my coaching clients is that actually kind of sometimes the real work is done between coaching sessions. And so, maybe you'll reflect on this after this session. You might be going for a walk in the park, you might be cycling to work or wherever you're going, and you'll kind of think more about what we've said today, and some more ideas might come into your head. But just some tips. So you have your 6 that you would have chosen today. So reflect on those values and make sure they are the right ones, and think about them over the next couple of weeks. The other thing is most people's values don't change, but they can change. So you can add to them or you can change them over time. So always just check in and see if you want to change them up. Like the personal mission statement, keep them somewhere where you can see them daily. I have some clients who've told me that they they keep them as their screensaver, or you can put them in your wallet. You can have them on a sticky post-it note on your desk. Just somewhere where you can check in with them every now and again. The other thing is to help them when you're making decisions, and particularly when you're making big decisions. So just kind of keep your values in the back of your mind, especially check in to see that you're honoring your values and you're not making decisions based on what other people want, and really you're making decisions based on what's important to you. Regularly check in to see if your values are out of alignment. If you have that pit in your stomach before you go to work, what does that mean? It usually means that something is off kilter. So check in, and being aware of it is actually half the battle. I'll always say in coaching, if you name it to tame it. So if you understand what it is, you have the choice, and everybody has the choice to address it then and there, or to think about ways that you can address it at a later stage. So it just gives you that feeling, and that kind of feeling that you have that personal choice. Also recognize your triggers and your reactions. What are your opposite values, and what are the key things that might kind of set you off? And just monitor your reactions around it. I spoke about sharing your values with others, in the leadership slide. So it's not just you may find it difficult to do, so you might even want to just pick one person and say, this is something I want to talk to you about, and then see how that goes, and get some feedback. And then you may decide to share it with more people as time goes on. I know with some clients that I've done this work with, and they've actually gone on and they've done kind of team exercise with their whole team, where they've done like away days where everyone has done this exercise, and they've all kind of shared, what are the things that are important to them and what are their triggers. So kind of everybody understands each other a little bit better, and know how to work with each other, and it can actually really help with some team bonding. So it's something you may or may want to do with your team. And the other thing is, some of my clients have said they've done it with their partner, and it's been interesting. They've actually realized that there's some values aren't the same, and maybe that's why they are finding it difficult to come to decisions together, or the priorities are different. So that's something you may or may want to do. The last two are mind the gap. So I got this from Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly. If anyone hasn't read it, it's a super book. And she talks about the value gap. So the aspirational values this is the way you want to live, versus kind of your kind of day to day, and actually how you're living. And I think what she's trying to say really, and she talks about this value gap, is that, we're not all perfect, and, maybe not to beat ourselves up if we're not living our values perfectly. They're there as a guidance and a direction, and they're not a set of rigid rules. So it's just to kind of be mindful that some people can kind of be very hard on themselves around this, and you don't necessarily need to be. So that's the webinar. I hope you found it useful and you got some tips going out of it. If anyone, if you want to contact me via LinkedIn, or my emails at the beginning of the presentation, happy to share some of this information with you and direct you for more reading. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. I don't know if there's any questions. If there is, I'm happy to take them.
I'm conscious we're literally on the time, Orla. So I will say to people, if anybody's any questions, to come back to either me or yourself on LinkedIn. I think that was superb. I think I'm going to print off those values this evening and go through them with my 3 teenagers here, and see, will it help us all to get on a bit
with
better?
Your children as well.
Apart from my husband, I'd see, can we all get on a bit better before we all stop fighting with each other the whole time? But thank you so much, Orla. That was brilliant, really superb. And as you said, a copy of the presentation and recording will be available. But if anybody wants to get in touch, they'll get you on LinkedIn or drop me an email, and happy to do that. We've just put up as a prompt to everybody who's on the call or on the webinar to remind you our competition is still ongoing, and we are looking for entries. So you see there's some of the entries of some of the people who sent pictures of their home office and their working environment, and the dogs and the environment they're working in. And we really would like to get a few more entries in, and we also are really looking for a team entry as well. So I know some of the guys are on there today that maybe have a team that would like to put in a group picture, as it were. I know they all have to be taken remotely, but just to encourage it. But as I mentioned, we have a really cool headset from Polly, and we also have a really good team prize as well. And once the photos are up there, you can actually go in and vote as well. So just to spread the word if you can. The closing date is this Friday, so only a few more days left for that. But Orla, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that webinar this morning. Just for everybody else that's on the line, to remind you, our next webinar is Friday. It's Ask the Expert. And this week we're delighted to have Aisling Williamson, who heads up the customer service operation for Sky in Ireland. And she's got a great story to share, just in terms of how they're coping with working remotely and what they're planning in terms of coming back into the workforce and reopening the offices. So just the details of that up on the website. And the other thing to remind everybody is that we're going to be undertaking a survey in the next couple of weeks about companies planning to come back to the office, the contact centre space, and what plans that they have, just to provide some best practice and guidance for members. So I'll email everybody on that in the coming days and ask you to nominate somebody to complete the survey, and then you'll all receive a copy of the survey. So thanks a lot. Sorry, I know we've gone a few minutes over time, but it was well worth listening. It was really good, Orla. Thank you so much for that. And thanks to you as always. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.